The office had almost emptied by the time Daniel Parker finally leaned back in his chair. The glowing lights of the city reflected through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting silver lines across the stacks of reports covering his desk. At 34, Daniel had earned a reputation as the most dependable project manager in the company. He never missed a deadline, never complained, and never joined after-work parties. While everyone else laughed in restaurants or shared vacation photos, Daniel quietly packed his laptop every evening at exactly 6 and rushed home. To his co-workers, he was simply the quiet single dad who never seemed interested in dating. His boss, Victoria Hayes, had noticed. Victoria wasn't just admired for her intelligence, she was respected for treating every employee like family. Yet one question had lingered in her mind for months. That evening, she stopped beside Daniel's desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Mind if I steal 5 minutes?" she asked with a warm smile. Daniel nodded politely. She handed him a cup before taking the chair across from him. "I've been meaning to ask you something, and if it's too personal, just tell me." Daniel chuckled softly. "Go ahead." Victoria hesitated before speaking. "You're kind, successful, and everyone here respects you. Why won't you date?" The smile disappeared from Daniel's face. For several seconds, he simply stared into his coffee. When he finally answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because my daughter already lost one woman she called Mom." Victoria's expression softened. Daniel looked toward the window as old memories flooded back. "My wife, Emma, died 4 years ago after a drunk driver ran a red light." His fingers tightened around the paper cup. "Our daughter Lily was only 3. Every night for months she'd stand by the front door asking when Mommy was coming home." His voice cracked. "I couldn't answer her." Victoria felt tears gathering in her eyes. Daniel continued. "Eventually she stopped asking." He swallowed hard. "But every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day, she'd leave a handmade card beside Emma's photograph." Silence filled the office. "People tell me I deserve another chance," Daniel said. "They're probably right." He smiled sadly. "But Lily finally found peace after years of grief." He paused before adding the sentence that shattered Victoria's heart. "What if I bring someone into our lives, and she leaves too?" The room became unbearably quiet. "I couldn't watch my little girl survive that kind of loss twice." Victoria looked away, wiping a tear before he could notice. She had expected excuses. She had expected fear of commitment. She had expected workaholism. She had never expected a father who had quietly sacrificed his own happiness to protect his daughter's fragile heart. Daniel reached into his wallet and pulled out a tiny folded drawing. It showed a stick figure holding the hand of a little girl beneath a bright yellow sun. Across the top, written in childish handwriting, were the words, "Daddy, you're my whole world." Daniel smiled. "Every morning before school, Lily slips a new drawing into my briefcase." He laughed softly. "She thinks they help me have brave days." Victoria could no longer hold back her tears. She realized the strongest people weren't always the loudest or the richest. Sometimes they were the parents carrying invisible grief while making sure their children never felt alone. As Daniel packed his laptop, his phone buzzed. A video call from Lily. He answered immediately. "Daddy. Guess what? I saved you the biggest cookie." Daniel's tired face instantly lit up with genuine joy. "I'm on my way, sweetheart." He ended the call and stood. "Good night, Victoria." She smiled through misty eyes. "Good night, Daniel." As he walked toward the elevator, Victoria understood something she would never forget. The world often mistakes guarded hearts for cold ones. But sometimes, the people who refuse to love again aren't afraid of getting hurt themselves, they're simply determined to make sure the little hearts depending on them never have to break again. Daniel's conversation with Victoria should have ended there, but neither of them realized it would quietly change both of their lives. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the office as usual, coffee in one hand and Lily's newest drawing tucked safely inside his briefcase. It showed the two of them building a sandcastle beside the ocean. Across the top, in colorful crayon letters, she had written, "Someday we'll see the sea together." Daniel smiled every time he looked at it. Victoria couldn't stop thinking about what he had shared the night before. His words echoed in her mind during every meeting. She had spent years leading teams and solving million-dollar business problems, yet she had never noticed the silent burden one of her best employees carried every single day. That afternoon, she called Daniel into her office. "I hope you don't think I crossed a line yesterday," she said gently. Daniel shook his head. "No. Honestly, it felt good to finally tell someone." Victoria nodded. "I've been thinking about Lily." Daniel looked surprised. "You said she loves drawing. More than anything. And you've never taken a vacation with her?" He smiled apologetically. "I always planned to. Something always came up: medical bills, daycare costs, work, life." Victoria opened a folder. "Our company has a family wellness program. Hardly anyone uses it." Daniel frowned. "I've heard of it. It covers paid family leave and even helps employees afford short vacations with their children." Daniel blinked. "I didn't know that. Most people don't bother reading the details." For the first time in years, Daniel found himself speechless. Victoria slid the paperwork across the desk. "You've earned this." He stared at the forms. "I can't accept special treatment." "It isn't." She smiled. "You earned every hour of it." Daniel looked down, fighting the emotion rising in his chest. "No one's ever looked out for me like this since Emma died." Victoria answered softly. "Maybe it's time someone did." A week later, Daniel and 6-year-old Lily stood on a quiet beach just after sunrise. The little girl kicked off her shoes and squealed as the waves rushed over her tiny feet. "Daddy! It's cold." Daniel laughed, a full, genuine laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years. Together they built enormous sandcastles, collected seashells, and watched dolphins leap in the distance. That evening, while the sun melted into the horizon, Lily leaned against his shoulder. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "You smiled all day." He looked at her. "I did?" She nodded. "I missed your smile." Those 4 simple words hit him harder than anything else ever could. He realized that while he had spent years protecting Lily from another heartbreak, he had also been hiding his own happiness from her. Lily didn't need a perfect father. She needed a father who could still laugh. Back at the office a few days later, Daniel returned looking different. Not younger. Not richer. Just, lighter. Victoria noticed immediately. "So," she asked with a grin, "how was the beach?" Daniel reached into his briefcase and handed her another drawing. It showed 3 people. Daniel. Lily. And a woman standing nearby, smiling. Victoria looked confused. Lily asked if she could draw the nice lady who gave us our vacation. Daniel smiled warmly. She said heroes deserve to be in family pictures too. Victoria felt tears fill her eyes once again. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with grand speeches or dramatic moments. Sometimes it begins with one person asking a simple question, and another person finally feeling safe enough to answer it. 3 months passed, and life slowly settled into a rhythm Daniel hadn't thought possible. He still worked hard, still rushed home every evening, but something inside him had changed. He laughed more. He took weekends off whenever he could. Every Friday became Lily Day, a tradition where father and daughter explored a new park, baked cookies, or watched old animated movies under a blanket fort in the living room. The grief was still there. It probably always would be. But it no longer controlled every decision he made. One rainy afternoon, Daniel was called into Victoria's office again. "I have some good news," she said with a smile. "The board approved your promotion. You'll be leading the new regional team." Daniel blinked in disbelief. "Me? You've earned it." He thanked her sincerely, but before he could leave, Victoria spoke again. "Daniel, may I ask you one more personal question?" He smiled. "You've earned that right." She took a slow breath. "Do you still believe opening your heart means risking Lily's happiness?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the family photo on his phone. Lily stood on the beach, holding a shell to her ear with the biggest smile he'd seen since Emma passed away. "I've been thinking about that a lot," he admitted. "I realized I wasn't only protecting Lily." Victoria listened quietly. "I was protecting myself." His voice grew softer. "If I never loved again, I could never lose anyone again." Victoria nodded. "That's a very human fear." Daniel looked up. "But Lily surprised me last week." "What happened?" He laughed gently. "She asked me if Mommy would be angry because we were smiling so much lately." Victoria's heart tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her Mommy loved us too much to ever want us to stay sad." He paused. Lily smiled and said, "I think Mommy wants us to be happy." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria quietly reached into her desk drawer. "I've never shown this to anyone at work." She placed a framed photograph on the desk. It showed a younger Victoria beside a man in military uniform. "My husband," she whispered. Daniel looked at her in surprise. "He passed away 8 years ago." "You never remarried?" She shook her head. "I buried myself in work." Daniel suddenly understood. The concern she had shown him hadn't come from curiosity. It had come from shared pain. They had both built walls from the same kind of heartbreak. Victoria smiled sadly. "I asked why you wouldn't date." She looked down at the photograph. "The truth is, I should have been asking myself that question." Daniel gave her a gentle smile. "You don't have to answer it today." "No," she replied. "But maybe someday." That evening, Daniel arrived home to find Lily waiting at the door with a handmade card. Inside was a drawing of 3 bright balloons floating into a blue sky. One balloon was labeled Mommy. The second said Daddy. The third said me. At the bottom, Lily had written in careful handwriting, "Even when we can't all hold hands, we're still a family." Daniel could no longer hold back his tears. He hugged his daughter tightly. "You know something, sweetheart?" "What?" "You've been teaching Daddy how to be brave." Lily giggled. "I learned from you." As Daniel held her close, he finally understood that love wasn't about replacing the people they had lost. It was about honoring them by continuing to live, laugh, and love with the time they still had. For the first time in years, the future no longer felt frightening. It felt full of hope. The company's annual Family Appreciation Gala arrived just before Christmas, transforming the downtown hotel ballroom into a place filled with music, laughter, and twinkling lights. Employees were encouraged to bring their loved ones, and for the first time since Emma's passing, Daniel decided to attend. He was nervous. Not because of the crowd. Because this would be Lily's first big event where families celebrated together. "Daddy," Lily whispered as they walked inside in matching navy blue outfits, "do I look pretty?" Daniel knelt beside her and smiled. "You look exactly like your mom when she smiled." Lily beamed. Across the room, Victoria welcomed guests with her usual confidence, but when she saw Daniel and Lily enter, she couldn't help smiling. The little girl ran over and threw her arms around Victoria. "Miss Victoria." Victoria laughed and hugged her back. "It's so good to see you again." Lily proudly handed her a small gift wrapped in bright red paper. "I made this for you." Inside was a hand-painted picture frame. In careful letters, Lily had written, "Thank you for giving my daddy his smile back." Victoria covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. She looked at Daniel. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," Daniel replied quietly. "The picture says everything." Later that evening, the CEO stepped onto the stage to recognize employees who had gone above and beyond. Everyone expected Daniel's promotion to be announced. Instead, the CEO smiled and said, "Tonight, we want to honor someone whose kindness reminds us that leadership isn't only about business. Sometimes, it's about changing a life." A spotlight settled on Victoria. The audience applauded as the CEO continued. "Because one caring conversation gave a father and his daughter a chance to heal, we'd like to recognize Victoria Hayes with our Humanity in Leadership Award." Victoria walked to the stage, visibly emotional. When she reached the microphone, she looked directly at Daniel and Lily. "I've received many awards during my career," she began, "but this one belongs to two people who taught me something I had forgotten." She paused. "I thought healing meant forgetting the past." Her voice trembled. "But I learned that healing means carrying love forward instead of carrying only pain." The ballroom fell completely silent. After the ceremony ended, Daniel and Lily prepared to leave. As they reached the entrance, Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy?" "Yes?" She looked back at Victoria, who was saying goodbye to guests. "I think Miss Victoria gets lonely some."